Now we turn to the intersection of architecture and the arts. The topic is Ushering Policy for Creative Transformation. Architecture meets the arts.
Please welcome our speaker of the session, Dr. Mika Savela, Arts Advisor, Architecture and Public Arts of Arts Promotion Center, Finland. Please welcome Dr. Savela.
Hello, everyone. Firstly, thank you for the organizers and everyone for hosting us, and it was really nice to, for me personally, a bit like return to Hong Kong after many years. I am a CUHK alumni, yay! And there is, I come from Finland. I'm an architecture, my background, but also working in curating and public art and many things. And somehow I've always had this kind of like a building this worldview of, I'm just referencing to the panel we just heard, that how somehow different these worlds are where we come from, but they somehow meet often in Hong Kong, and it is really like a fusion of many thoughts and patterns. I was asked to share maybe some ideas from my recent work in Finland, looking at how somehow on the policy level, architecture and art and public art, instead of like achieving this like the version of the built environment that we somehow crave for, how these experiences are perhaps, well, some of my experiences, but then I was just listening to the previous presentations and thinking in the back of my head, oh, maybe I also have to try to sort of like think like, how does this apply to Hong Kong? Maybe that is the sort of lesson that I can share. But in any case, if we mention the words together, public art and architecture, often if we think about the city as a place, as Hong Kong often is foremost a city. I come from a country that is many cities. It is also a country where one city does something completely different from the other, where their idea of public might be different in the north than it is in the south. But somehow, overall, the goal is better built environment and sort of like places and spaces where the goal is to achieve high quality environment. And in order to achieve this quality, the question is like what is the criteria? Like, what is high quality? What is agreeable for everyone? What is good? What is the best version of a space? And what does architecture and art and all of us sort of contribute into it? And based on that shared criteria, or an attempt to do that, we can write policies. And then, obviously, the challenge is what to do with those policies. In the context where I work, there are many levels to look at this. Often this kind of thinking that we have a local context in reference to some sort of a national context, and then there's an international context. But it feels like, is it top-down or is it the bottom-up? What are the relationship between these things? In their international scale, from the point of view of Finland, we're part of the European Union, and we're also part of certain international agreements, like the Davos Declaration, which is sort of this document that states that there is this idea of building culture, Baukultur in German. And then that is sort of like become slowly the framework of how European Union, for instance, talks about the built environment, that building anything is culture. It includes beauty, it includes heritage, it includes sustainability, everything. There is a document produced by the European Commission, and then there's a program called European Bauhaus, which is sort of this funding program for projects. These exist in the background. And then I've been working, this was launched in 2022, a second national program for architectural policy in Finland. I was part of the working group. And the idea is to create a sort of a document that guides this country, Finland, to the 2030s, with this idea of like what is our common agreement on the built environment. It's super huge, like as a document. It includes everything from climate change to social inclusion to economy, exporting things, local identity, creating meaning, and education and research. Well, this is super top level sort of viewpoint on everything. You can only, in these kind of documents, it's like everything's great, like you're just giving these sort of wonderful ideas. And then it also includes public art. It places arts as part of the built environment. There are like, if you, just for a moment, because I also work in the public arts sector, there is a kind of like a two-way system in Finland. On the national level, we have these grants that the government gives for local cities and municipalities to create their own 1% for the arts projects in sites. If there's like, for instance, a school built somewhere or something. Then we have in addition a state art commission, which is run by the National Gallery in Finland, that commissions artworks for government real estate and buildings. But then, for instance, here is HAM, is the Helsinki Art Museum, is the operator and commissioner for public arts in Helsinki. There is a map, for instance, on the HAM website that showcases all public works that are in the collection of Helsinki Art Museum. These include all the new artworks in new districts, everything that you see outdoors. They include historical monuments, statues, memorials, sort of things that are not even anymore so relevant. The museum takes care of them. So there's that sort of historical part. And then these kinds of artworks are built in the new districts. All of them are maintained by the museum collection. And this happens on the local level. Then on the national level, the scale for public art thinking is maybe a bit bigger. The state art deposit collection is artworks that are, and crafts and ceramics and everything that is bought to sort of like to be utilized in government buildings. So if you work in a government agency like the tax office or the police department, you have access to these. As an employee, you can sort of request art for your office walls or your shared spaces, and larger artworks are sort of commissioned in the public spaces and outdoor areas. And then we commission also larger projects. For instance, this is the new annex to the National Museum in Helsinki by JKKM Architects. And the public artwork consists of these sort of like handmade mega ceramic mosaic works that are in different locations. These are very long projects, so they take like multiple years and you know, require a lot of investment and time. And so So these are sort of like how the public art is governed. But then, because the problem is that we're looking at things from the policy level, and the public art may be a nice little highlight in this kind of like what makes a good environment, sort of embellishes it. Then we have this other part, like the built environment as a whole. What to do with that, how each individual city council, town council, district, places, spaces, how they are designed, how they get built. And for that reason, for the past something like 4 years now, and this project is coming to an end, but I've been working with this question that what happens in local contexts. This sentence in Finnish means "you are here," which is often the spot that we see on a map or in like an orientation chart or something. This is a public artwork that is in the premises of the Aalto University in Finland, but it's actually was erected by students as a sort of like a joke, but it has become somehow popular that you're here. But the "you're here" is a good sentence for understanding local contexts. So instead of that kind of top-down or sort of international, local, national, sort of the idea has been to reinterpret now this national policy paper more in this kind of fluid way, that everything sort of floats in the same universe. Sometimes the local is very close to the international, or the other way around. So that nothing gets really filtered through something, but it can kind of exist in the same energy in a way. And we've been calling this concept, well, new local, even though it's nothing local is new, nothing is ever new, but then somehow the way we live through times and the big changes that world is currently facing, like in many places, the same development, like digitalization of our lives and sort of this multi-site existence and aging populations and all these things, it means that we always have to sort of create a new versions of localities. That's what the new means. And this project developed into something we worked with 8 municipalities around Finland. I won't go through it that much, and it was more of a sort of pilot on how to test these waters. But one thing that we discovered, working with, these are the names of some of the sites and places, that we realized that there is no one policy for all. Well, surprise. But instead, we could see that that certain areas or certain municipalities or cities, they could do very well by working with the existing framework of planning and zoning and sort of thinking about their economic vitality using very traditional methodologies. Then maybe some other cities sort of could find their strategies more from the culture and arts and sort of how to develop certain areas with a very sort of cultural strategy in mind. Reuse, building heritage, circular economy could be like, or was a sort of like a way forward to create their own policies for other cities. And these were just sort of like glimpses of into some of the projects that we work with. And I would say this is maybe only kind of a starting point for some of the things to come. So we were thinking, for instance, that how these sort of local level policy papers may not even need to be papers. Maybe they can be just systems of thinking how to work with local people and communities, for instance, like how they can be turned into experts of their own contexts. Or what if you only work with culture and art within the land use and planning, and then think like, what does that enable? No need to necessarily go through the entire big paper processes, and this kind of like chopping up the policies into these smaller bites makes them more accessible locally. This is what we've been finding out. We've also think that in the work that we've been, when we speak of architectural policy, it already becomes very complex. Architecture doesn't mean anything for most people. Policy, also quite difficult. Politics, super difficult. So it is much easier to just simply ask how to develop the local environment or your context. And we live in a country that has sort of, as I said, aging population, well, also mentioned for Hong Kong. It means that there's like less taxpayers, there's maybe less public money available for new development, also less need. Like, you don't need yet another new housing district if there's less people. So within that context of diminishing public resources, for instance, and output new visions through those old processes, the question could be that, is it more about what is the role of architecture, what is the role of art? It's about sort of like organizing this locally existing resources, whether that is information, knowledge, ideas, or work, or labor by the locals and their agency as that sort of public resource for development. This kind of interest, I think, to the neighborhoods and the places, it's not obviously anything so specific to one place. But I've also noticed that these are all Nordic examples. That this Oslo Architecture Triennial, for instance, the previous time around worked with neighborhoods. In Sweden, the National Center for Architecture and Design does these kind of like practice-based research projects, often looking at things like power of the places or visions for the North, which is, I think in the Nordic context, North means the sort of lesser populated areas in the northern parts of these countries. Or for instance, only last year, City of Helsinki published its regional or city-specific architecture program that is very focused on placemaking and kind of like trying to really bring that sort of local placemaking processes as part of the city budget and city kind of like planning process. So it's not just some test or a pilot, but it's just like the standard. So this kind of like heavy interest of sort of like shift to the neighborhoods, to the locality, that's the big thing. That's sort of like a trend. That's sort of where we're heading anyway, and especially in the north. There's also something that I've been working with a colleague in site in Croatia. And then in the same vein, there is some colleagues in Italy. And articles like this, these are available at the eFlux site. There is also a pattern here that these ideas that not every strategy or policy we take kind of like has to come from big things or big processes. And we've been calling these strategies from below. Sort of they are a little bit the undercurrents, and even the kind of quite small actions sometimes can generate enough sort of sentiments that, okay, here's something that is worthwhile, what makes places worthwhile staying, living. This group, Robida, in Italy, for instance, is based in a very sort of slow urban, rural village in in Italy and talks about situated practices, something that like maybe the space that you already have has the potential and the resources and the answers, but you just have to sort of find them and maybe invite people to join you. So from this topic that I got, architecture meets the arts, I guess like my sort of suggested topic would be this idea of building culture, that it's that not just the art anywhere by itself, not just the architecture by itself anywhere, but it's sort of located in some culture. And we are all experts of our contexts. And sometimes we can shift between other contexts and learn from them. But I kind of like this idea of the building culture, that it is about buildings, but it's also building culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Savela. Please stay on stage. Next, we will have a panel discussion, which will be moderated by Dr. Isi Jiang from Educational University of Hong Kong, who brings a sharp eye for design and civic engagement. Dr. Isi Jiang, please. They will explore how architecture, artistic practice, and creative policy can intersect to transform urban spaces and community life. And now let's invite our panelists on stage. Ms. Erica Choi, Chief Executive and Secretary to the Board of Urban Renewal Fund. Dr. Xu Zhang, Principal of Xu Zhang Design Research Office. Ms. Elfie Zhang, General Manager of Brand and Design at Sino Group. Ms. Yvonne Low, co-founder of Soft Space. Now I'll pass the floor to Dr. Jiang. Dr. Jiang, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here and for this opportunity to chair this, moderate this very important discussion. And I want to thank again for Dr. Mika Savela for your interesting, very local, national, and international perspective. And I really, very like your new local as a methodological framework to rethink and promote the participatory design or art-based interventions or the placemaking process. I'm very fascinated by that, and thank you so much. And I think you also mentioned that there are different stakeholders involved in this process, right? To make everything come true, to build the culture. And we're also very, very lucky today that we have our very different stakeholders with us. We have founders, architects, and I think we also have developers and engineers. So I would also hear from your perspectives about your perspectives on when architecture meets the arts. So maybe I will start a question to Erica. So because you are the founder of your F, and I want to know, is there a quick takeaway from you, say from a founder perspective that could be adopted right away from the Nordic experiences that may be shared from Mika?
Hi, thank you, Mika's presentations. And what I take from Mika's presentation is the importance of policy framework. It sets space for people that they could cultivate. What's the ending of Mika's presentation is building culture. I think when architecture meets arts, it's how to create space for people to cultivate what they value and what they want to change. So as a funder, I think we are the middle ground of everything. What Mika mentioned is, I think something very fascinate me is the scale of things, of the policy framework in Finland, that they care about big pictures. They have the national framework, how to fit into international framework, but they also have the small things, the strategy from below. And it is somehow what we value, because UL Fund, we support ideas and advocacy from the community, from bottom up. And we are somewhere in the middle ground. We will talk to the government. We also have a close synergy with URA, which they do the main work to renew the whole urban area of Hong Kong. And we are somewhere in between to provide fund and space for artists, for the locals to voice out, oh, this is my community. And we are somewhere in the supporting the strategy from below. But we are also looking way forward on the overall larger policy and how to combine and draw the bigger things and the smaller things on both sides and let things grow. So we are a platform, a space to let everything like big and small to come together. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mika, for your very inspiring talk just now, and also yesterday at the welcome drinks, a very interesting conversation as well between us. And I think when we go to this topic from country level to policy to all this, it's all a very, very visionary, very big picture. But for a developer, we are talking about space. You're talking about policy, and we're talking really about how to build a space where people can live, can work, and can play, in this area. And Hong Kong is a very unique place, really unique, because we are very densely populated. And we all know how precious is every meter, every feet is. So how art play a role in such a precious space in Hong Kong is always a very interesting point for us. And for a property developer, we have to balance between many different topics like sustainability, wellness, art for sure. It's also play a very key role in building a space where we can create a better quality of life for people to do the things that I just mentioned. So for sure, having a policy in art where we, as a property developer, if we can actively participate, that will be very interesting for us, because in the end, we have a goal. We all have a goal to improve people's life. So how to achieve that? It definitely requires much bigger, community to come together, to communicate constantly, to investigate and to look into this topic. So I'm very pleased to have this forum today, because it's a very interesting topic where we have all this expertise coming together today to discuss this. So we have been talking about, during tea, we have to talk. So yes, for sure, very interesting day today.
Thank you so much. I think Erica and Elvie, you both mentioned that everything cannot be achieved by a single stakeholder, and we need to collaborate, we need to communicate, and we need to talk. So I actually have a follow-up question with you. Like, maybe you can, because you both had a very, very, very important role in this project, and I would wonder, like, how do you see, like, each department, for instance, how they can reach a common ground, reach a consensus, maybe when we need to make a final decision during this process?
Okay. So yes, we have many departments. We have many stakeholders, in an organization, in any organizations or in any projects. So the most important thing is to find a common goals. So we all can work towards that. And everyone have their own goals. Everyone have their own hidden agendas. But we, in the end, want to achieve something where everyone can take a glory and everyone can be proud of that particular project. So finding a common goals is very important. So that's why, you know, every company, they have their brand promise, or their objectives, you know, like our company is creating better lifescapes, which, you know, have a lot of pillars and things like that. It require a lot of communication. It require a lot of clarification. What do you want? What do I want? How do we come together to achieve that goals? It requires a lot of art to do that as well. So, this is how, you know, goals, to have a very, very clear goals that we all come together and reach that goals, to find that goals together and to reach that goals together.
Well, I was really, really fascinated by the idea of like, there's an art in our collaborations as well. And now I would like to invite Su Chang. I know you are an architect, and I was trained as an architect when I was an undergrad, so I was really like interested about your perspective, because we know that, could you share as a practicing architectural studio, like what kind of policy would encourage you to submit your proposals that could broadly embrace the perspective or the idea of art?
Okay. What we mentioned earlier in the talk, like policy is a very abstract term, right? So I agree. So rather than think about a policy, perhaps what kind of way of working can the policy enable? And for us, this experience working with the Tai Kok Tsui team, I think it's an interesting experience because I think it's a rare chance in Hong Kong that everybody at the table can actually come together to work together. So for example, we have these various visits to the factories to see mock-ups at different stages, and LV's team joined, our center team joined, the contractor joins. I really get to see the materials, the structure one-to-one, and evaluate, and have our, basically, like you said, set the value and set the common ground among the team. So I think that's a really rare chance, because in Hong Kong, working as an architect, most of the time, we each have our own title, right? And then we sit at the different sides of the table. But when you're on a trip together, in the same van, you're in the same factory space together, you have different types of dialogues enabled. And I think perhaps in the future, I'm thinking if either policy or the way we work on projects of different scale, different types, can also enable this kind of close collaboration and communications. So everybody really participate, as you mentioned, and really get to express their ideas and thoughts, and really have a platform to basically communicate. And that's really what's different in opportunities like this when it comes to a very, let's say, in quote, typical projects, in the city.
Thank you so much for sharing this. And now I would like to invite our last stakeholder representative here, Yvonne, for, I think you're from Flower Artwork Engineer, right?
Yes.
So I would like to know your perspectives on, like, do you welcome the 1% policy in Hong Kong? And, or would you prefer policies that could encourage, like, other integration of other values, including the art, through the development process?
Well, I think the 1% policy, like in Hong Kong, is a good start because, like, we make like people like more awareness about art. So right now, so people think that like art, like I would say that like people would think like art and the developing like buildings is a two separate piece. But like what I think it should be like kind of like is one together. So 1% policy is good start, but what I'm worried is that like, well, people may get used to, okay, well, this is one of the checkbox. I need to just make sure that it get things done. So it becomes like one of the like must-do item rather than they just think about like what to do about arts. So what I believe like is that like what we can do is to mix like those two things together. So first of all, we'll get a 1% policy as a like good start, and then make people more awareness about art, and then afterwards we can just more integrate with that, like make people like think that, oh, okay, how to make arts to be like instead of just a separate piece, how to like create like identity to the communities, fostering communities, etc., etc. So just mix all those, or like art and like developing our communities together.
I think also like the most important keywords I catched is together. So I think we have questions from audience to Mika. Because the audience said you asked policy versus reality. So what do you see as the biggest gap between policy intervention and actual implementation in public art and architecture?
Well, I mean, what a small little question. Well, I think that maybe a bit referencing to what the previous panelist Yvonne just said, that if we think about, like, for instance, the city of Helsinki, the capital of Finland, kind of represents in many ways the most sort of like well-working machine in producing like high quality environments and public art. It's sort of like a sort of a public works yeah, exactly, like a machine that sort of like works and everyone knows what they're doing and there's a policy and then you just implement it. And in some ways you can frame that as a wonderful example that yes, because of these policies, there is a certain agreed criteria that certain stakeholders always have to be included, and then there's participatory processes, and then there is the public art, and and the results are in many ways good environment, and that sort of over time also develop, and the results are good in general. But then at the same time, it is more complex because it's not, we're kind of like, now the machine is going very, like it's sort of like a train that is going into that direction, but the world is also changing. So we're kind of like have this train that is all the time producing sort of mechanically almost like more and more works of art that are good as such, but there's about like 85 public artworks in process all the time, sort of like building new works somewhere. Over time, they accumulate. They become also, you know, something that has to be maintained. The policy also has to expand somewhere. Like, well, how do you finance that? And it's sort of like we're looking at time in different kind of sections. That each place also has a future. It has a past, and so I think right now. This gap between policy, which is sort of like it's always existing. It's sort of like even when something seems to be working well seen from afar, it has its little quirks like that. And then this is a good example. Then there are other examples where somehow bridging the gap is much more difficult, where you really have to. Like there are, for instance, cities in Finland that don't have a sort of a city architect, for instance, at all. So the few people who work in the cultural office have never had a meeting with a technical director or something. So these are like so different, the scale of these little gaps. But I do think that there's a lot of references, there are a lot of examples, and there's not a single right way to do it. And then, as I said, sometimes even just bringing people to the table together is already a big policy step.
Yeah, thank you. And I think maybe we have few stakeholders here, and they are already like playing a very important role in bringing people together, bring us at the same table to talk. And what you just mentioned really like echoed one of the, maybe two of the questions that really interested me. The audience said, Hong Kong people care a lot about functionality, and how can public art also be useful? For example, providing shade to sit under or making a boring space more interesting. But at the same time, I also noticed another question from the audience saying that, okay, in Hong Kong, property development is huge, and how can we convince big developers to invest in public art, not just decoration, but for real culture? So I would like to hear your thoughts on this.
Let me organize a bit. So the difficulties to first talk about functionalities. Hong Kong people are very function-minded. But I really want to respond to Professor Lee's presentation in responding to this question. Is Hong Kong people seldom think about emotion. And I think art, public art, especially for example, in this Tai Kok Tsui project, which we love so much, is that we remind Hong Kong people, it is okay to have emotion. Don't talk about functionality so much, or rephrase functionality as emotion, as connection, as memory, as heritage. These could be functional as well. Then the public art itself could ease up Hong Kong people tension or their the hassle of everyday life. And then you will have space to think about how we could live better. And I think this is why it is important that we have arts in our life. And also this is important for policymakers, for developers, or for funders to realize this need of emotion, of mental wellness. When we talk about mental wellness, we always thought about, okay, treatment, therapy, or go see a doctor. But what we now talking about are social prescription. A park is your therapy. The park goers, your neighbors, is your therapy. And these are very important in making a city. Because in the past, planners or policymakers, they all think about Hong Kong city is numbers, figures, profits. But I think in the new reality is that we need emotion. And therefore, arts is something that could drive and give an opportunity for people to admit to this emotional need. And also give a chance, because arts could usually a smaller scale. If we talk about urban planning, it is like hundreds of acres of land. But art could be just this square feet here. You could make something thoughtfully provocative, but in this very small budget, like the sign, you're here, it's a very, very thoughtful and provocative. It doesn't cost a lot. So developers, think about it, not even 1%, maybe 0.01%. That could help the flat buyers of a development or the consumer to a shopping mall to reinvent or rethink what their life could be in that development. So that's how public art works well in the market in coming future. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can add something to that note, I think that there's a lot of discussion in Finland about like where should public art go, and also like what is its role within the arts, and then because it is somehow always a bit hovering in the space that is it sort of a public amenity. What is the difference between an artwork or a sculpture in a gallery, or then like a playground, or I don't know, like a park in general? And I think that this is a question that should not even be so like present, because this is just like the environment that we live in, and it's evolving. So I think it's perfectly okay to have architects, for instance, working with the community that produce then as an end result maybe some sort of a placemaking project that could look like art or is art, or it could be an artist working with a developer producing a space that kind of has all architectural qualities. Or so what kind of like if I don't think there should be any regulation or kind of policy for like what art should be, for instance, obviously. So there's a lot of like leeway here. Public art project can be, it can be a series of discussions. It can be programming of a space. It can be something permanent, something temporary, something no one ever sees, or it can be the one thing that orientates you and creates identity in the place for centuries or for forever. So it's all of those things, and that just creates more opportunities as well.
It's very, very beneficial for me to sit here today. Thank you, Erica, for beautifully saying, art can create emotions. And yes, I agree with you. Hong Kong is a very stressful city, and art can definitely bring that emotion, to people. And regarding, functionalities, and Hong Kong is a place where it really, looking at, functionalities, and as a property developer, yes, of course, because we need to build a space, like what I said, it needs to be for work, for play, and for living, and it's all about value as well, the value of the property, this is what we are all talking about. But you can also see that a lot of property developers are progressing over the past many years in this topic of art. Different property developer has different stage. And some property developers, sometimes I do find that they may just be superficially, put an art piece, very expensive one, and put that place. But like today, what is the identity of that place? What is the culture? What is that community? Professor Lee is very inspiring one. As a place, Kowloon district, you just build a whole place where there is no identity of that part of the city, So what does it mean to us as a property developer where we have space? What kind of art is meaningful? What kind of things which can bring joy to people? Every day they come to do shopping, to a mass ordinary living people, they just go to the supermarket to buy something. What kind of art is relevant for them to be put in that space? So I must say I'm still learning, and I'm very grateful, to hear, all of you sharing, your insights. So this is something where we have to think, and that's what I said, I'm learning and I'm investigating, thinking about it, constantly finding the right partners and the right, stakeholders and architects and all the different friends to look into this area and what is the most relevant one for that particular space, for that particular shopping malls, or for that particular residence. This is definitely a very interesting one that we have to look into, look beyond more than functional, tangible functionality, but something more than that.
Well, I personally would very, very appreciate your pure heart of building more emotional, supportive environments for the people. And I think your answers also answered one question, from the audience, asking if and how can public art help build a stronger sense of community? And I think we can do that through building small arts and embedding the art elements in our maybe everyday environment, and also put the seeds of like growing arts and embracing arts in our minds. And I think I still have a last question for our artists, because you are really the ones play a very direct role in this process. That one question from the audience asking, many young people in Hong Kong are creative, but find it hard to get opportunities. Maybe from your perspective and experience, suggesting how can the government or our developers better support local young artists and architects?
Well, I think it has to go both ways. I think because I also teach, so I have this conversation daily almost with students. I think for the younger generation, I think, first of all, we have to really be out there and look for opportunities. And sometimes you cannot just sit there and wait for the chances to come to you. And once you start to practicing the habit of looking for opportunity and resources, and when you have new opportunities, like for example, the competitions through the projects arise, you would be able to really get to it and really be able to expand the kind of exploration you've already been doing. Yeah, so that's one. But I think from the either the government or the developer or the resource, let's say, holder, I think there's also perhaps we need to build up some tolerance for experiment. So perhaps more room for experiment, and then be able to, because in Hong Kong we love the word liability. So we hope everything is predictable, and that's the opposite of, let's say, art and creativity. Yeah, and also I think, and also related to the last question, what can let's say, public arts or project like these, what can they do? Perhaps is to also provide a freedom, a space of freedom for people to have new types of behavior that are not necessarily all fall into the scope that you predicted previously. There may be new types of new ways of living that the art pieces can enable in spaces like this. And I think that from that point of view, perhaps the stakeholders we need to allow for that room to experiment and that kind of new ways of living to emerge. Yeah.
Can I add something? I think the pavilion that you designed is a great example of like having that freedom and flexibility from all stakeholders. The story behind it and what touched me a lot through the process is that it is a pavilion in we call it yellow area, which is a government land and managed by the developer. And this is a space of freedom and maybe shared power, I could say. Because in a public land, usually ordinary people don't have the power to build something. And this yellow area, this little space, idle here that people just come and go, have these opportunities through this project magically change to a place where architects, designer could come together and like, test their muscle and like flex the muscle. And also developer could like try something that is very out of the box. Because there is no brief. Everyone is welcome to say what is the best for the space, including consideration of the heritage, the context of the space, and the shared power after its completion goes to the people, all the users, people living in the condo above or the older area, older neighborhood opposite the pavilion. And it shows that everyone is giving their flexibility, because what I understand is like the more middle class resident usually would like to protest about things that are out of the box in their backyard. No, don't do this. This is weird. I have never seen a pavilion like this before. But no, it didn't happen. Everyone is. I know that the owners corporate are very generously say yes, for the projects. And this is very, very rare in Hong Kong. Usually the 中產 would just say, no, it is very dangerous. It's very sharp, and no, it would got rusted. But we have the opportunity to test about the bamboo structure, right? And this is the first bamboo structure pavilion in Hong Kong. And people don't use zinc metal that often in a building because they got somehow rusted quite easily. But it reflects the industrial heritage in the area. So this magical little pavilion really give like response to what you said, which is important for people to have this flexibility, this freedom in the space to test and experiment. And we hope we could have more little project like this, so that people could really try something new out of the very functional Hong Kong.
Yeah, I agree what Erica said. So think out of the box is really important. So I remember when I just installed my eyepiece, the inflatable eyepiece on the building. So I remember when I just when I was there watching the installation. So a group of youngsters who is living in that community just passing by when they saw my eyepiece, they said, wow, this is really good because it is kind of something new, stuff inflatable piece, it's really new stuff, and they were really amazed. So what this is something new in their communities. So it's kind of they think that it's kind of creating identities, fostering their communities. So they were really supportive. So I think what looking forward is think out of the box is really important, and then the developer will take the art it's not it's kind of their social responsibility, rather than just I know I just agree what you said is okay, just think about the values, because most of the Hong Kong people just think about okay, what they will bring is to us. So, but think about the social responsibility, how to just creating just fostering our local communities. I think is another thing we need to think about it.
Let's put fairness to Hong Kong and the government in general, and also the developers as well, because when we talk about good old days, we don't have anything except just very little found with landmark, whatever, with the Hong Kong land, which I also named. But after some years, you can see the changes. Apart from Sino, you can see New World has been doing a lot. You can see Henderson has been doing a lot. And I say Sino under your new boss, Mr. Wong Wing Kwong, I suppose they all art as being something as attributes to the Hong Kong culture in general. For the government as well. I know the government has been spending a lot of money in these days. Now, put it this way, about 1%. That has been discussed for many years, about 1%. And because I see in many of those advisory committees in government, we will always talk about whether this has to do or without. But after a lot of discussions, we found that if just 1%, it may be just too rigid. Why not just leave it to people who are interested in art? So we can see that some of the projects is actually beyond 1%. So let things to be more qualitative than just quantitative. Instead, now you can see very nice public arts by MTR, by developers, and the government spending a lot of money, even though, people are still always very vocal. Oh, this is no good, this is lapsap, whatever. But it takes some time. I think people to be more open-minded and be more liberal, and we'll see Hong Kong with a better future. Thank you.
Well, thank you again. I think that was an amazing ending speech. So I would like to thank everyone again for your generous sharing, and I hope there will be more arts in our daily lives in the future, and there will be more opportunities for different stakeholders to be bring together to talk and share our ideas. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all our speakers for the insightful sharing. Please join our audience on the floor.